I've picked up a lot of, kind of tools and strategies along the way. But now my passion is really assisting you guys and being a resource for you in education, because I think it's really important in today's time to really allow agents to thrive, especially with the new NAR settlement and regulations, because it is a changing transformation for the real estate industry. So why should you establish yourself as a buyer's agent? So at this point, because of NAR, we no longer have a right to rely on listing agents to co-broke and split their commission with you, which means buyer's agents must now rely on sellers directly or their own clients to determine the amount and payment of their commission. So the reason why this is important is, before on the MLS, you guys would always, have a co-broke situation. So the listing agent would essentially tell you, how much they are willing to co-broke with you and how much of a commission the seller was paying. Now that law is going away starting in August, which means it's really important for you to establish your own buyer agency with your client, both by way of a buyer agency agreement and negotiating directly with the seller as opposed to the listing agent or your own client. Okay. So now I've seen a hybrid of situations as well, which we'll get into. I've seen situations more often than not now recently where the listing agent has worked out a provision in their listing agreement that a portion of the commission payable by the seller will go to the buyer, or will go to the buyer's agent, and then the portion is paid by the buyer directly. Okay, so I have been seeing certain circumstances where you guys are getting paid both by the seller and your own client. All right, but how do we make that happen? So first and foremost, the buyer has a choice of whether to use a realtor to represent them in their home buying process. Now, many buyers still choose to work with a buyer's agent because they rely on you guys and your expertise and the value that you bring. All right, but it's important to set yourself apart from any other agents out there. And by doing that, the more expertise that you offer, the greater the chance that a buyer will choose to work with you. Okay, but you have to prove it. And there are certain ways that you have to do that. So the result will facilitate in survival of the fittest. So it really will determine which agents will succeed and which will, fall off. So it's time to really up your game, and the stronger agents will really shine through. You guys will have the greater market share by proving your worth to the buyers. And it will help sift through a lot of the agents that really don't take their real estate career seriously, because you guys will now have a chance to shine and to secure those buyer agent relationships. So that's why it's really important, and that's why it's going to be a true transformation as a result of NAR. And those agents that can really prove their value and have the experience and the expertise, those agents will really shine. Okay. So the competition is, so your agent motto, this is what I think every agent should take with them, and your motto should be. So in today's market, the competition is even greater. And for buyers that don't think they need to work with a buyer's agent, it's even more important to establish your value, worth, and expertise by communicating with full transparency and explaining the magnitude of your services. You will be able to convince buyers that working with you is a must if they want someone protecting their interests. And this saves them time and money as well. But you have to be prepared, because being prepared is the key to your success. And leading with professionalism and care will enable you to secure more buyers with confidence. All right, so this should be your motto moving forward in order to really secure agents and your commission. Okay, so how do you set the bar for yourself? it's important to establish your ethos. All right. So a couple questions that you need to ask yourself and that you should establish as a part of your value. One, what makes you different from everybody else? What are you bringing to the table? What is your superpower that will set you apart? Is it the fact that you have a great deal of experience working with investors? Is it that you have a great deal of experience working with new construction properties, maybe multifamily homes, maybe first-time home buyers, co-ops, condos, whatever it is? But whatever your level of expertise is that you pride yourself on, you have to focus on these specifics when marketing yourself to buyers. All right. So establishing your ethos and really what makes you shine and makes you the best agent is what you need to communicate to your buyers. All right. That is what's going to allow them and convince them to work with you. So what are the benefits of working with you? So every buyer is going to say, okay, well, why do I need an agent? If I can go right to the seller or right to the listing agent, maybe save some money. What are the advantages? Okay, so you need to know your advantages and you need to be explicit when communicating it to those buyers. So one, your commitment to personalized service. So you have to let your clients know that you will dedicate your time and energy solely for the buyer's benefit. You make sure that they have a dedicated real estate professional that personalizes their experience and service every step of the way. So you are going to be doing a lot of hand-holding. You are going to walk them through the process. You are going to be their advisor, their resource. Any questions that may come up, you are going to be there and guide them and protect them. All right. You also want to communicate your expertise in a specific territory or property type. So again, co-ops, condos, single multifamilies, investment properties. So whatever you specialize in, you can let your client know, look, I have done XYZ number of transactions. I am, very experienced as a buyer's agent. I will help, guide you through the process, avoid any common pitfalls. Time and money are the number one things that buyers do not want to lose. They don't want to lose time and they don't want to lose money. And this is exactly why they should work with you. Also, your dedication to transparency and integrity. So express how you guide the buyer throughout the transaction, from negotiating the terms to protecting them, including price negotiation, inspection, mortgage process, final walkthrough, and the preparation for the closing. Okay, so, it's really tough, especially in those states that are title states, where the agent is really coordinating the entire transaction from start to finish. It's hard for a buyer to just do something like this on their own. And they really have to understand that by having you in the deal with them and really like a part of their team, that they need you. It's not just an option, but they need your guidance. They need your expertise. But the more that you explain to them and you really, communicate to them what you will do for them, that is how you are going to convince them to work with you, as opposed to just looking up listings online, reaching out to the listing agent and, setting up their own appointments, because then they're just on their own and they really don't know how to negotiate effectively without you. So the more you do, the more you provide, the more value you bring. Okay. So the pros of working with a buyer's agent. Let's make sure that we go, through step by step, all the pros of working with you. So buyer protection through effective negotiations. So you are the ones that are going to negotiate different contingencies, whether it's the mortgage contingency, inspection contingency, credits for them based on maybe upcoming assessments, based on any repair issues, negotiating extensions of time. So if they need more time to secure their loan commitment, if they need more time to complete their inspection, whatever it may be, these are things that will result in a smooth and efficient home buying process. That's where you come in. Secondly, expertise in securing favorable terms. So a buyer is not really going to know, what type of pitfalls, come about in a real estate transaction, but you do. You've been down this road before. So with every deal, you can save your client, again, the time and money by avoiding them. So negotiating favorable terms, maybe you say, look, standard, is 30 days for a loan commitment, but if you're buying a condo or a co-op, it could take a little bit more time. Let's negotiate 45 days for you. All right. Or inspection, sellers want to say, hurry up and inspect, do it in 7 days. Well, as a buyer's agent, you can negotiate 10 to 14 days for them. These are things that buyers are not going to know to do on their own. All right. So this is where you come into play. Next, guidance and support throughout the transaction. So as questions come up, as issues arise, because no deal is going to be cookie cutter, no deal is just going to be, straightforward. There's always going to be little wrinkles or hair in a deal that come up that nobody, really expects, but you will be there for them as a resource. So when they do have questions or problems, you can guide them through it. Again, these are all the advantages and pros of a buyer working with you as a buyer's agent. Now, how, compensation breakdown. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to structure compensation. At the end of the day, you guys work very hard. You put a lot of time and energy into the deal, and you should be compensated accordingly and compensated well. All right, now it could be structured in several different ways. So now that the burden really falls on the seller and, possibly the buyer, we need to structure the commission and have those conversations in advance. Okay. So the first rule of thumb, the number one thing that you need to verify as you are pulling listings before scheduling showings for your buyer is you want to make sure that and you ask the listing agent how much commission is the seller offering to the buyer's agent. That's the number one piece of information, because based on that answer, you are going to know how to proceed and negotiate, all right, with your buyer. So like I said, when I'm working with listing agents these days, and they are restructuring their listing agreement with their seller, the way that they're doing it is, page one is essentially, okay, as your listing agent, seller is offering, let's say, a 3% commission to the listing agent to take the exclusive listing. Then there is an addendum that the listing agent will attach to the agreement that says, okay, seller, well, obviously it's really important that, we want to attract buyers, and there are agents that are coming in with buyers. How much compensation are you willing to offer that buyer's agent? So the addendum will say, okay, look, I'm going to pay, 2% or, 3% hopefully to any buyer's agents. But a lot of sellers are getting, a little savvy these days, and they feel that maybe they don't have to offer as much because they feel that the buyer is now going to be paying the buyer's agent. Now, sometimes that's the case, but that's not always the case. So an effective listing agent will really say, well, look, seller, we don't want to turn buyer's agents away. And we also want to make sure that we're opening up, the listing, to a wide portion of the market. So in order to attract more buyers with agents, we should offer a reasonable compensation. So as a listing agent, that would be the right, way to go about it and to communicate it to the seller. Ultimately, though, it is the seller's decision. So first rule of thumb is you find out how much the seller is offering the commission to the buyer's agent. Next, based on that, you can cover the gap, all right, with a portion from the buyer directly. Now, I've seen clients or agents, I call them clients because you guys are my clients, but I've seen agents offer a variety of services and commission structure. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can do it as a flat fee basis. or you can do it as a percentage of the purchase price. All right. However, you become more marketable to buyers based on your flexibility to service them and tailor it to their needs. All right. So the more, variety you can offer a buyer, the more likely they are to work with you. Because if you just say, look, buyer, you're going to pay me 3% no matter what, then that buyer may or may not, choose to work with you because, again, it's going to affect their purchase price. It's going to affect their closing costs. So you can say, these are the services that I am going to do for you. And based on these services and based on your budget, this is what this is what I would recommend, and this is what I would offer. So obviously, as most buyer's agents out there, what you could start with is market research and analysis. So as far as being, again, their guide and expert as to current pricing and current, market conditions and available properties. So you're going to pull recent comps, you're going to pull data, closed sales, and current listings in order to analyze this and make the right offer. Okay, so before you were probably doing this already, but now you're going to be a little bit more thorough with it because you're going to show your buyer, hey, if I'm charging you a commission, then this is what I'm doing in exchange. I'm not just merely, pulling listings from the MLS and sending them over to you. I'm actually doing an analysis for you. And you convey that to your buyer, okay, because that is value. Secondly, property identification and evaluation. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of each property? So this is something that you are going to, again, explain to them, hey, based on, this particular property, it's in a wonderful, I am familiar with this neighborhood, or I've closed in this building before. These are the pros, these are the cons. You can work with them and discuss, again, based on their needs. Maybe it's a co-op, but they don't allow subletting. Maybe your client actually wants to sublet in the future. Okay, well, that's a con of that building. If it's a condo and maybe it's new construction, hey, these are the pros. It comes with a new construction warranty. You get XYZ of this. So again, you are probably already doing this before, but the more that you explain this to your buyer, the more that they understand your services. All right. Next is negotiation and contract assistance. So how to negotiate the offer, how to approach the listing agent with your buyer's offer, what number to come in at based on what you think is reasonable, based on the terms. Are we doing all cash? Are we doing a significant amount of money down? Are we doing a quick closing? Are we waiving the inspection, contingency and just agree to purchase as is? All of the negotiation and writing up the contract, if you're in Florida, is something that is very valuable to a buyer, because if a buyer just relies on a listing agent, the listing agent has their fiduciary duty to the seller. Okay, they have no duty to the buyer. They're just a transaction agent. So by explaining these things to your buyer, you again tell them, look, I am your advocate. I am working on your behalf. These are the things that I'm going to do to protect you. By going directly to a seller or a listing agent, you are losing all of this benefit. Okay. And then lastly, closing coordination and support. All right. So preparing for the final walkthrough. Do you think that a listing agent is really going to, walk you through the property thoroughly to test everything at your final pre-closing walkthrough? Because after the closing, we lose all of our leverage. If the buyer notices that something pops up the day after closing, well, nothing survives the closing. Now the seller, has no real liability to you as the buyer. And without having a buyer's agent that's going to walk you through the property for the final pre-closing walkthrough, you really, are left to your own regard to try and test everything. So again, that's imperative and something that's very important. So based on all of these services that you are going to offer to your client, you can have different tiers. All right. You can say, look, depending on the services that you want me to provide, I can offer a flat fee sliding scale or a la carte pricing, okay? Again, this is after you already know how much the seller is offering you as a buyer's agent. So you are going to tweak and tailor this proposal accordingly, because first you have to know what the seller is offering, then you are going to tailor your agreement and your structure, your commission structure. So tier one could literally just be pulling properties from the MLS, coordinating the showings, negotiating the price, and preparation of the offer. And that's really it. And then they're on their own. Okay, thank you very much. You know, you can pay me, you know, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it may be. And that's it for tier one. Tier two, they get everything in tier one, plus they get the inspection contingency process and negotiation, which means you help them review the report with the inspector. You help negotiate the repairs or the credits. You walk them through the entire process. You are the go-between between the listing agent and the buyer, okay? Because that way the buyer is not just blindly going through an inspection negotiation on their own without having the proper guidance. And then tier three is everything above in tier one and two, plus you work with them on the mortgage process if they're getting financing. So overseeing the appraisal, maybe there's a gap in the appraisal that you negotiate a reduction in the price. Okay, maybe, you know, if there's any shortfalls or if you need extensions, this is something that you are working with them and their lender throughout, guiding them through the process. And the settlement process, so the time of closing and the final pre-closing walkthrough. So these are all really important, and this is something that you should negotiate with them and outline for them in advance. Okay, or, you know, maybe we're not going to do a flat fee and we're going to do a percentage. Okay, so again, you know, recently I've had a few transactions where the buyer's agent collected a 1% or 2%, upwards of 3% commission directly from the buyer, okay? And we wrapped it into their closing costs. So once you know what property your client wants to make an offer on, and I would suggest that you maintain your own chart or Excel spreadsheet based on all of the properties that you are scheduling showings for your buyer, and you maintain a chart saying, okay, I know, you know, as a buyer's agent, the seller is offering me compensation of, you know, 2% or 1% or whatever it is, so that when it comes to offer and acceptance, that your buyer agency agreement is going to be confirmed with your client as to what the difference is. Okay, so that the buyer will cover any difference between what the seller is paying and what you're collecting from the buyer. Okay, so those are the numbers that you can work out with them directly based on the percentage. Now, you have to, again, tailor your services to the client needs and budget. Okay, so every buyer out there is different. They have a variety of price points and needs. You have your first-time home buyers that are going to need a lot of direction and a lot more hand-holding, in which case the compensation should be higher. You know, you could be working with savvy investors or luxury buyers that really are more experienced and self-sufficient, and maybe they don't need as much guidance. They still want your help in the transaction, but they're not going to need as much, you know, hand-holding. So you can tailor your commission structure accordingly. And you can get, you know, creative by working in payment of your fee into the numbers. So maybe there are some buyers out there that are like, look, I'm on a tight budget. However, my max, you know, would be $800,000 or whatever it is, and that would be my max budget. Well, if you negotiate for them, you know, and you get an offer accepted at $750,000, and you tack on your $50,000 commission on top of that, then, you know, now you have come under their budget of $800,000. So there's ways for you to get creative and say, okay, look, buyer, you know, all in. And of course, this is a conversation. Once again, you are very transparent with them. And you say, look, all in, from what I understand, you are, willing to pay a max of 800,000, including any necessary, commission. Is that correct? Yes, my budget is 800,000. That is correct. Okay, let me see what I can do for you. I'm going to negotiate this deal accordingly to get you within your budget. So wherever you land with the listing agent and whatever offer the seller accepts, you factor in your commission payment into that budgeted price. Okay, so maybe you guys end up at 775. All right, well, now your commission is 25,000 because you still got to the $800,000 figure that worked with your buyer's budget. All right, so these are important things that you have in the palm of your hand when negotiating on behalf of your buyer, and you are still working in your commission into the spread. Okay, now, how else can we get creative? Okay, so there's buyers out there as well that are like, look, I really need to save my liquid cash. I am willing to pay you a commission, but do you have any ideas of how I can possibly finance in your commission payment, into my offer? Yes, I do. Okay, so this is very wordy and I'm going to summarize it for you, but for everybody who attended the class today, I will email you a copy of my presentation so you can see a breakdown of the numbers. I'm a numbers girl, so all of these things, I am very familiar with, but not every buyer's agent is familiar with, financing in sellers' concessions. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how this works, but rest assured you will get a copy of my presentation, after the class. So let's again work with that $800,000 figure. Okay, so option one is already what, I explained before regarding working in the commission spread. Now, option two is financing in the commission into the purchase price. So this is what we call a seller's concession. Okay, and this is a fabulous tool to utilize when a buyer wants to save their liquid cash and they want to finance in the commission payment into their loan amount. Okay, so how do we do it? So what we do is we start with the purchase price of $800,000. We tack on your $25,000 commission, and we call that a seller's concession. So now our purchase price on page one of the contract becomes $825,000. That contract, and then on the addendum, essentially states the parties confirm that the purchase price of $825,000 includes a $25,000 seller's concession to be applied towards buyer's closing costs. Okay, so that contract goes to the appraiser for the lender. This cannot work if it's an all cash deal. Just note, this only works when there's financing involved and the purchaser wants to finance in the buyer's commission or any portion of their closing costs for that matter, because the buyer's commission really is a closing cost at this point. Okay, so that contract will go out to the lender and the appraiser showing $825,000. The lender will now take, so let's say it's an 80% LTV, which is loan to value. So the lender will now finance 80% of $825,000, okay, thereby including the extra $25,000 into the loan amount. All right. So now at the time of closing, so now we have a loan commitment based on 80% of $825,000. And at the time of closing, the seller issues a $25,000 credit to the purchaser towards their closing costs. All right, so the seller will now net $800,000. They walk away with their $800K, and the buyer saves $25,000 at the time of closing because they get a credit of $25K. So that $25,000 now covers your commission, and the buyer has just financed that extra $25,000 into their loan amount over a 30-year term. All right, which really only factors into maybe an extra, $50, $60 a month over that 30-year mortgage term, and really does not affect their payment And now you guys get paid out the 25,000 from the proceeds. Okay. So, it's a, some people think it's complex, but it's really not at the end of the day. If you do enough seller's concessions and your lender or your loan officer is aware of how to structure it, with which most of them are, then it's a no-brainer, and it really helps your buyer from saving that extra liquid cash and not having to come out of pocket and cut you a check, from their funds. Now, the one rule of thumb is the appraisal must always come in at the increased price. So if we are building in a seller's concession on top of the purchase price, then the appraised value must also read 825,000, because as most of you know, a lender can only lend up to the appraised value regardless of what the purchase price is. Now, when you're talking about, $800,000 properties and above, $1 million properties and above, it's really not hard to substantiate another 25,000 of value. So 95% of the time, and you guys will know because of the comps, all right? You guys will already know if this is going to work based on the comps in the area. But when you're already at 800,000, 900,000, $1 million plus, adding on your commission amount does not really make or break the value, because an appraiser most always finds the additional value in the property and will appraise it. But for this reason, it's really important that you reflect the full purchase price with the concession on page 1 of the contract, because the appraiser is not looking through, and going through the riders and the addendums at the end. They're looking at page 1, they're looking at the purchase price, and they're saying, okay, this is priced at 825. All right, yes, I see the value. I will appraise it at 825, because we need the lender to take 80% or whatever the financing amount is, 90%, 75%, whatever the loan amount is of the full purchase price in order for this to work. Okay. But it's a really great tool because it's really going to save your buyer on that liquid cash, and it's not going to hurt their pocket as much. Okay. So this is a sample buyer agency agreement, which you guys will also have in, the presentation that I send over to you. So this is a template. Now, for those of you that, have a brokerage that already provides a template of their buyer agency agreement, by all means, defer to your manager and your broker, because, I don't want to trump any other brokers out there. But if you are an independent, agent or part of a small boutique firm, and you guys are looking for a template or sample buyer agency agreement, then, by all means, I'm happy to share my template with you. And this can be tweaked. This is why I send it in Microsoft Word, because everybody can tailor and tweak it, accordingly. All right. But as per NAR and the new rule that goes into effect, August 14th, it used to be at the end of the July, just so you guys know, it used to be late July that the law was going to go into effect. They pushed it out to August 14th now. And then they're mandating that everybody start implementing this law by fall. Okay. So it's important, I would say, get a head start, because it's going to be a domino effect, and you guys don't want to be left out in the cold, and you're going to want to protect your interests, and you're going to want to, protect your relationship with your buyer. So start, having these buyer agency agreements signed. It's also going to solidify your relationship with your client, because again, it's not just business. It's about forming these personal relationships, and it's about establishing a level of trust with your buyers. And, by having full disclosure and transparency, and again, letting your client know that you are advocating on their behalf and that you are here to protect them and save them time and money. Those are my key words, and I will keep saying it because that's what the buyer wants to hear. All right. So this is the sample buyer agency agreement, essentially stating that it's between the buyer and the agent duly licensed in the state of which with XYZ brokerage for the purpose of utilizing agent services to view properties for purchase. Now you can list all the properties that you are showing them here. You can always attach addendums for additional properties, but initially, let's say your clients want to see, I don't know, 10 properties. I mean, who knows? You guys know better than me these days, but let's say you're pulling 10 properties, list all the properties, regardless of if you get an accepted offer or not, you want to list all the properties. Then the description of services. Okay, so the agent agrees to provide the following services, and everything that you're going to do for them, you're going to have them initial. Okay, and then client further acknowledges that the commission fee of, and you're going to negotiate the percentage here, all right, shall be payable by the agent to the seller or by the seller/buyer. So if it's going to be a hybrid and you're going to do a percentage payable by the seller, again, depending on the price, and a percentage payable by the buyer, then you also want to state, okay? Or I have a line for a flat fee if you guys are going to negotiate a flat fee. Again, go for the percentages because that is how business has been conducted. But if you have a buyer that says, look, I'll pay you a flat fee, kind of like we did in the threshold, my first example, where it's like, hey, you get me within my budget, any price you negotiate, you keep the commission and you keep the difference, then that's going to be your flat fee basis. Okay. And then obviously the laws will be governed by the state of where you are licensed, and then it gets signed. And I always have a signed PDF or electronically signed copy shall be deemed an original for purposes of enforcement. And that's because a lot of things are DocuSign and electronically signed, so you still want to protect your interests. Okay, so this can be tweaked and tailored per every buyer that you're working with, because again, no buyer is going to be the same. Okay, now a couple terms that you should be aware of. Make sure that they sign your agreement up front before you even start scheduling showings. Okay, so once you say, okay, these are the listings that I pulled for you, this is what works in your parameter, I think these will be great options for you. Are you interested in seeing these properties? Yes, no, whatever it is. Once they say yes, I'd like to see, 1 through 5, then you are going to document all those properties and include it on the buyer agency agreement before you schedule those showings and take them to those listings. You want to have the duration of the agreement at least 1 year. Okay, so because some of these buyers, look, they might start with you, and you might spend 3 months working with them, but what if they take time off and then they come back and whatever it is? So at least 1 year, okay? Or maybe, who knows, circumstances may change. So you don't want it to just end in 30 days. You want to make sure that relationship is long-term. Scope of services provided. So list what services you agree to provide, including all of the properties you're going to show them. The commission structure and terms, so flat fee or percentage. And then exclusivity clause and responsibilities. Okay, so they have to pay you for any property you show them, even if they end up making an offer later on down the line. All right, so this is like the catch-all provision, which means, look, I started with you and I showed you this property. You can't go back and take another agent to a property that I already showed you, because that was, I procured, that showing and that listing for you. So you really want to have that provision included to protect you down the line. Okay. All right. So just to wrap up, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. But overall, my Abundance Real Estate coaching program, my mission and values is really to allow you guys to become more experienced, to increase your knowledge and your depth of the real estate industry, to increase your revenue, your independence, your profitability, and increase your closing percentage. So that is my mission, and that is really what I am here to serve you guys, because we know it's a changing time, and we know it's really important to set yourself apart and become a stronger agent for your client. So a lot of the tools that I teach that you will find both in my Win the Listing online course and in my coaching program is deal structure, how to structure deals successfully, maximizing your commission, how to get the most money for your effort, tailoring key provisions and contingencies, introducing you to legal negotiation strategies, and then implementing greater resources for your clientele to increase the number of contracts signed. So very important for you guys to learn, and it's very important for me to help you and guide you through those tactics. So I have a special offer today for anybody that takes advantage of within the next 24 hours and takes action for my online video course, which is called Win the Listing. It's 7 video modules. It comes with a complimentary Win the Listing ebook, and it's 50% off today. You guys will get a link after the class along with a copy of my presentation. So it's $497 and includes a breakdown of the A to Z blueprint of how to win more listings and scale your commissions. Okay, so for anyone that is interested, I urge you to check it out because it will really, there's 2 things going on in this market. One, listing agents are really sitting pretty these days because they are securing a greater market share and a greater commission by representing sellers. So if you're typically a buyer's agent, which is wonderful, you should also focus on listings because that's where a lot of the money is at. And, becoming a buyer's agent and a listing agent will really help you maximize your commission and scale your business even farther. So for $497, you can take advantage of my Win the Listing online course, and that will give you the whole blueprint start to finish. And I urge you to check it out. The code is WIN50. So you just plug in that code at the time of checkout, and you will get the final discounted price. So I'd like to open it up to any questions that any of you may have. And, congratulations for coming to the class and really taking advantage. I appreciate you guys all being here. Yeah, you have everything in the chat. Madison already put you in there, put everything in there for you. So if you have any further questions, let me know. And otherwise, I will be available at your disposal should you want to reach me after class. And thank you, everybody.
Talia, thanks for the great class. Really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, Faisal. Thank you so much for you and your team for attending. And I hope to see you guys soon in Florida.
Yep, absolutely.
code is 150, not 1,500, just in case you want to correct your message.